So to discuss the role of Taiwan's biggest defense ally, we are now joined by Ray Powell. He's the director, CLITE at Stanford University. Thank you so much for joining us, Ray. I want to start with this. What is your take on the results of these elections?
Well, I think it's what we largely expected based on the polling we were seeing. And, you know, the United States took no position, as it generally does, on its preferences for who should win. Whoever wins is somebody the United States would have to deal with. And so we tend to be very careful about making sure that we are open to any outcome. So, I mean, and in some ways, it represents a status quo. The DPP will continue in power, and the current president and the president-elect seem to have largely the same policies.
And U.S. President Joe Biden said on Saturday that the United States does not support the independence of Taiwan. Can you give us some context to this? And is this more of a message to Beijing rather than Taipei?
I really think what the president was saying was that we are just continuing the same policy we've had since 1979 in the Taiwan Relations Act, which is that we diplomatically recognize Beijing, but we will continue to have relations with Taipei as we have ever since. We want peaceful resolution of disputes and peace and stability in the Taiwan Straits. So, I think what he was saying is that we are not changing. We, the United States, are going to be largely on an even keel. And if you have a narrative that the United States is somehow pining for Taiwan independence, that we're just going to remove that pretext.
Right. I want to move on to the fact that China has basically framed or even said that this is a choice, these elections are a choice between war and peace. So I'm going to move into the defense realm. And let me give you some background here. Although Washington does not have formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan, the Taiwan Relations Act mandates that the U.S. enables Taiwan to maintain a sufficient self-defense capability. The U.S. support is critical to Taiwan's national defense for many reasons, but especially because China's military machine far outweighs Taiwan. Taiwan has just under 170,000 army personnel against more than 2 million soldiers of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. And that is why the United States has been selling Taiwan billions of dollars worth of military hardware over the years. And as mentioned, the United States is bound by law to give Taiwan the means to defend itself, and that includes other forms of support like training. Ray, China has reiterated again and again that reunification or unification, as the Communist Party never actually ruled Taiwan ever, is a very possible outcome from these election results. How do you interpret Li's win from a strategic affairs point of view then?
Well, I think that a lot of the Communist Party rhetoric has been, as Neil said, has been part of their coercion campaign, their gray zone tactics to try to influence the election, which seems to once again have failed pretty miserably. So, I think that in the end, China is going to have to figure out what to do with the fact that it hasn't been able to sway Taipei through coercion or harassment or its sort of overbearing tactics. It's going to have to decide whether, as Neil has said, it wants to keep digging that hole, or whether it wants to realize that it's just not in its national interest to keep doing it this way.
Now, one of the main issues for Taiwan also is it remains at the center of the power play between the U.S. and China. Now, given now the vice president, Xiaobi Kim, was the former de facto diplomat in the U.S., it is conceivable that relations between Taiwan and the U.S. are probably going to head or become even stronger, which probably wouldn't be to the preference of China. In that case, if a more aggressive move was made towards Taiwan, how prepared is the U.S. to, or how far will the U.S. go in backing Taiwan, bearing in mind also the allies in the region?
Yeah, so Taiwan is probably as close as you can get to being an ally without being a treaty ally. There's even been presidential memoranda saying that we would treat Taiwan as a major non-NATO ally, even though it is not actually officially that. And part of that, of course, is because Taiwan, besides being a beacon of democracy and a demonstration that, democracy is possible in Asia, it's also a very critical piece of the defense of the Western Pacific from a U.S. perspective. It's a critical link in the first island chain. And if the United States were to allow Taiwan to fall, its credibility would take a major hit among its allies.
So what do you suppose Washington's strategy is going to be now, given the fact that China has very clearly said that this is not the outcome they wanted? Do you feel like the U.S. will be making more overtures to China, or do you think they will maintain the hardline stance we've seen over this Biden administration?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a continued mix of deterrence and assurance. You know, assurance being kind of exemplified by what happened when Xi Jinping came to California and met with Joe Biden. But at the same time, there will need to be a strategy of deterrence in conjunction with America's allies in the region. And in the end, deterrence is probably the most important part of the entire equation. We really do want Xi Jinping to wake up every morning and decide today is not a good day to invade Taiwan.
And we'll leave it there. Ray Powell, thank you very much. Ray Powell speaking to us from California. He's the director at Sea Light at Stanford University. Thank you.